Hi, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on applying for NSF Postdoctoral Research Fellowships. I'm David Robinson, the Director of Membership and Meetings for the Linguistics Society of America. Thanks for taking time out of your afternoons today, and we're just going to wait a few more minutes for the rest of our attendees to join us, but we'll get started in just 3 or 4 more minutes. So sit tight, please. Thanks.
I don't know.
Okay, I think just about everyone is here, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar on applying for NSF Postdoctoral Research Fellowships. I'm David Robinson, the Director of Membership and Meetings for the Linguistics Society of America, the LSA. Right now, you'll see on your screens a short slideshow about the LSA and what we do, and if you're not already a member, you'll see a special discount membership offer for attendees of this webinar. I'm happy to introduce Dr. Josie Welkom, the Acting Program Director for the Directorate for Social, Behavioral, and Economic Sciences, that's the SBE, its Postdoctoral Research Fellowship Program, and the SBE Research Experiences for Undergraduates program at the National Science Foundation. She will be talking to us about the Postdoctoral Research Fellowship Program and its aims, elements of the proposal, review criteria, and strategies for putting together a competitive proposal. Joining Dr. Welkom will be Dr. Joan, Program Director for Linguistics at the National Science Foundation and Professor Emerita of Linguistics at Brandeis University. There is going to be a lot of time for question and answer, so have your questions ready. Before we get started, I'd like to just take a moment to make sure that you're familiar with the GoToWebinar dashboard. Firstly, you will see an audio widget on your dashboard that will allow you to hear the audio portion of this webinar using your computer audio or by phone. And during the first part of the webinar, your microphones will be disabled. During the question and answer portion, you will be able to use the raise hand button. And you're going to see the raise hand button at the top of your dashboard. It's got a little icon of a hand. You can use the raise hand button to let me know that you have a question, and I will enable your audio so that you can ask it. And second, we have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that Dr. Welkom is going to use today, and you're free to download that at any time. It is in the Handouts widget on your dashboard. And then finally, before we get started, we'd just like to take a quick survey so that Dr. Welkom can get a better idea of your experience. with this program, and it'll take just less than a minute for everybody to answer and for the results to be displayed. So I'm going to start that now. So go ahead and answer, and when we're finished, we'll share the results with everybody. Great, it looks like almost everyone has voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and then I'm sharing results with everybody. So you should be able to see that 61% of you are just about to become PhDs, 14% are recent PhDs, 13% are postdocs, 9% are faculty members, and 3% of you are other. So thanks, that's very helpful. I am going to turn the floor over now to Dr. Welkom, so give me a moment to make that happen. And go ahead. Okay, Dr. Welkom, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just getting my
Okay.
camera started. That one. There we go. Can you see us presenting? Can you see our room?
I can see the camera. I can't see the presentation yet.
No. Okay. Can you see my computer screen at all?
No, not yet.
No. Okay.
There you go.
There you go. That looks a little bit different than before. All right. Hold on. Sorry.
You trying to see the screen?
Yeah, you can see my screen. I can't see my screen. There we go. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to talk about the SBE Postdoctoral Research Fellowship Program. I'm glad that you have joined, and I look forward to your questions. As David mentioned, there's an option for raising your hand. In the room with me is Dr. Mailing, the Program Director for Linguistics here at NSF, and Ms. Lisa Jackson, who's the Program Specialist for the SPRF program. Okay. All right. Okay. So just to give you a little bit of a brief background about NSF, NSF is an independent federal agency which was created in 1950. The mission of NSF is to, 1, promote the progress of science, 2, advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and 3, to secure the national defense. So you have a little bit of a context about what NSF aims to do. NSF funds all fields of science and engineering. The social, behavioral, and economic sciences is one of the research directorates. NSF also has biological sciences, directorate, engineering, mathematical and physical sciences, computer and information science and engineering, geosciences, which includes our polar programs, integrative activities, education and human resources, and international science and engineering. Not all of these directorates or offices have a postdoctoral fellowship program. A lot of them do, but they're linked to the science that directorate supports. So let me tell you about SBE's mission. Specifically, the mission is to promote the understanding of people and their lives by supporting research that reveals basic facets of human behavior, social organizations, and institutions. SBE also aims to provide mission-critical statistical information about science and engineering in the U.S. and the world through the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics. and SPE's mission is very broad, and it obviously includes linguistics and language sciences. This graphic here gives you a sense of how SPE is organized. So our assistant director is Dr. Faye Lomax Cook, and our deputy assistant director is Dr. Kalina Craig Henderson. SPE has two research divisions, Behavioral and Cognitive Sciences, led by Dr. Alan Tompkins. And you can read there the list of programs that fall under that division. And then you can see there it says linguistics, documenting endangered languages, and a host of other disciplines as well. Our second division is the Social and Economic Sciences division, led by Dr. Dan Swee. And there underneath that is the list of the programs supported through that division. SPE also houses the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, and those are the programs that are run through that, that center. So SPE is, the SPRF program is unique. It falls under the Office of Multidisciplinary Activities. That is because it encompasses all of these disciplines that are managed through our divisions. In addition to the SPRF program is the Research Experiences for Undergraduate Sites, which I also manage, and our Science of Science and Innovation Policy. So NSF supports the majority of academic research in the social and psychological sciences. As you can see here, that's 67%, and this includes the academic research in the U.S. So you can get a sense of the scope of research funded by NSF through this graph. I'm going to now get into more of the logistical information about the SPRF program. So the goals of the SPE Postdoctoral Research Fellowship Program are to promote fundamental research in the SPE sciences, enhance the participation of underrepresented groups, and provide an opportunity for independence and advanced training under the direction of a sponsoring scientist. NSF offers postdoctoral research fellowships to provide opportunities for recent doctoral graduates to obtain additional training and to gain mentorship from a sponsor, as I mentioned, and mainly to broaden their scientific horizons beyond their undergraduate and graduate training. So the SPRF program seeks, one of the main things is that it seeks to encourage independence early in the fellow's career through supporting his or her research and training goals. The research and training plan must address important scientific questions within the scope of the SPE Directorate. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about developing your fellowship program. You want to demonstrate not only how you are advancing research in the SPE sciences, but how your proposal will help to support your career development. Fellowships awards are unique here at NSF. Excuse me. I was hoping that wouldn't happen. So applications are submitted directly by the fellowship candidate, and the awards are made directly to the fellowship candidate. Unlike the typical grants that are made through NSF, there is no institutional middleman in terms of submitting. In terms of submitting your proposal and or receiving your fellowship award. So when you are applying to the SPRF program, you act as your own authorized organizational representative, or AOR. So one important thing is that fellowship candidates need to identify a sponsoring scientist and a host institution. The fellowship candidate does not have to be affiliated with the host institution at the time of submission. We will work with you at the time of your award to make sure that you are affiliated with that institution by that time, but at the time of submission, you do not have to be affiliated with that host institution. So when you're selecting a host institution, this only includes U.S. academic institutions. No international institutions could serve as the host. And this can include colleges and universities, museums, research labs, etc. And the sponsoring scientist that you select has to also be affiliated with that host institution. Excuse me. Okay. Okay. The SPRF program has 2 tracks. Track 1 is fundamental research, which aims to support research that builds fundamental knowledge of human behavior, interactions, social and economic systems, and organizations and institutions. Track 2 is our broadening participation track, which aims to increase the diversity of researchers who participate in NSF programs and thereby increase the participation of underrepresented SPE scientists in the United States. And one thing to really keep in mind here is that you do not have to be a member of an underrepresented group to apply to the broadening participation track. The research you propose just has to be consistent with the aims of the broadening participation track. Okay. You qualify, you're eligible, I would say, for the BP track through either your individual characteristics, that is being a member of an underrepresented group, or through research which focuses on helping to inform efforts to broaden participation of underrepresented groups. And proposals can only be submitted to one track, and that is at the discretion of the applicant. So, oftentimes fellows will ask me which track they think I think they should apply to, and I usually punt that question back to them. It's up to you to decide if you're eligible for track 2, either through your characteristics or through your research. It's up to you to choose which one to apply to, and I can't provide any guidance there. All right, so our SPRF, our awardees receive a $138,000 award for 2 years. This includes a $54,000 per year stipend, which supports which supports your living expenses. And then there's also $15,000 per year research and training allowance. That's supposed to include all expenses related to the conduct of the research and the education activities or training you propose, anything in support of you, such as office space, supplies, things you need, and then your fringe benefits as well. So the research and training allowance is dispersed annually. So the $15,000 is provided at the beginning of each year in total. And the stipend is dispersed quarterly. So we provide $13,500 every 3 months. Important to note, the fellow is not employed by NSF. They're employed by their host institution, and we request a letter confirming this from your institution. So no W-2s or anything like that is provided to the awardees. So we really ask that fellows communicate early with their host institution about the process and to get information early on about things such as health insurance, because NSF cannot intervene on behalf of the applicant, and institutions have lots of varied policies in terms of how they process these fellowship awards. Okay. So as far as eligibility criteria, applicants must be a U.S. citizen, national, or legally admitted permanent resident. If you do not fulfill one of those categories, we cannot assist you in gaining residency either. And you must have a doctoral degree in the SPE sciences. And you might ask, what is considered the SPE sciences? And what we pretty much say is take a look at the programs that are supported through the SPE Directorate. And if your degree falls under one of those programs, then you're welcome to apply. And the degree must have been obtained either 36 months before or 10 months after the application deadline. So you can apply as you're, while you're still in the last year of your doctoral training and be able to receive the award come that June through September. And you cannot be in a current tenure-track faculty position. So what's the timeline? Applications are usually due sometime between October and November. Look at the updated solicitation to find out exactly what date the applications are due for that fiscal year. We have our panel meeting sometime between December and January. We aim to send decisions to applicants between February and May. Those applicants who are going to be awarded, I will request documentation from them, such as their letter from their host institution indicating that they are affiliated, IRB approval, all those kinds of things. And then between May and August, NSF will issue the official award letter directly to the fellowship candidate before their start date. Okay, some application guidance and tips. So before you apply, make sure you have read the solicitation and are familiar with NSF's proposal and award policies and procedures guide. So in situations where the PAPG and the solicitation differ, follow the guidance in the solicitation. We also have FAQs on our program page for common questions that we receive from applicants. And so I say read because the potential consequence of not following the guidelines in the solicitation is that you work really hard on a proposal, you submit it, and you miss a critical element and your proposal is returned without review. So it's really important that you make sure you understand or are familiar with everything that is required for the submission. Okay. So you think you've got a great idea, you want to apply. So I think one important place to start is to sort of get a sense of what it is that has already been funded through the SPRF program. You can review the abstracts of the awards that have been made on the SPRF program page. So when you log onto the page and scroll down to the bottom, there'll be a link there that'll take you to recent awards. So it's a good place to start. And it'll have a summary about what the research is that's being conducted. You know your field best, so identify what is missing in the literature. How could you think about how you could contribute knowledge over the course of 2 years? You want to really make sure it's something that's feasible to conduct within that time period. Are you able to sell your research idea? Do others in your field agree that this is an important avenue of research? So think about if you had to talk to someone else who has your background and maybe even someone slightly outside of your area. Would you be able to convince them that this is worthy of NSF funding? And are you prepared to conduct the research you're proposing? So sometimes you want to conduct certain research, but your training doesn't necessarily support you being able to conduct that research. So you want to really make sure that you have the appropriate background. But if you need specialized training, that's something that you can also include within your proposal. So I would suggest thinking about what training you would need to make your proposal really well-rounded to be able to conduct your research. And if after all of that, you're still not quite sure if your topic fits, you're welcome to send the program officer a one-pager, really just a high-level description of your research and your aims, and get feedback about whether or not it's an appropriate fit for the program. Okay, so any topic within the purview of the SBE Sciences is supported. I want to put that out there, and here's a link to the SBE core programs. I put the synopsis here for the Linguistics program and the Documenting Endangered Languages program, given that this webinar is hosted by LSA. So if your research falls under any of these categories, it is well within the purview of SBE and can be submitted to the SPRF program. So here are some of our recent awardees. I'm just going to run through their titles a little bit. So this is between FY17 and FY18. So Samantha Rarick, she's at the University of Hawaii. Her proposal is titled Sina Sign Language and Initial Description. So that's a DEL proposal, documenting endangered languages. Emily Morgan at Tufts is studying neural mechanisms of probabilistic prediction and language comprehension. Natsuki Atagi, she's at University of California, Riverside, studying the consequences of early language experience and literacy for adult learning. Christopher Hefner at the University of Connecticut. His proposal is titled Identifying a Common Mechanism for Phonetic Learning and Phonetic Adaptation. Brita Long at Stanford University. His proposal is titled Interactions Between Word Learning and Visual Category Development in Infancy. Genevieve Higbee at University of California, Riverside, Neural and Cognitive Changing and Aging, Bilingualism, Implications for Language Production and Executive Function. Maria Arredondo at Yale University, Infants Emerging Functional Specialization in Bilingual Language Acquisition and Attentional Processes. And Hannah Forsyth, University of California, Irvine, Modeling the Stages of Pronoun Acquisition. So how do you select a sponsor and a host institution? Identify what characteristics are most important to you in a mentorship relationship. This is also an opportunity for you to receive high-quality mentorship at a very critical stage in your career. So you want to think about aspects of that person and how that will help you to develop as a scientist. People have different ideas about whether or not they would want a sponsor who's more junior, or if they want a senior person. I think that's all up to you to think about what would best serve you and what it is they could offer you in terms of supporting your research development. You can contact your mentor well ahead of the application deadline, potential mentor, and discuss your idea and their willingness to serve as your sponsoring scientist. There are aspects of your proposal that we expect that they review and really sign off on saying that they have read. So we want to make sure that they are involved in the development of your proposal. You do select a sponsoring scientist, but you can also have secondary mentors, especially in the case where there is additional training you might need. You might select someone who's an expert in a particular area just to oversee your career development in that area. And also, when thinking about your host institution, consider whether that location gives you appropriate access to the population of interest. If you are looking to, do a project, with English as second language groups, you want to make sure that particular language population is available to you there, and don't overlook things like that in your research plan. So, how are proposals reviewed? The two criteria are intellectual merit and broader impact. In the intellectual merit section, you need to make a strong argument for the importance of your research. Question: what value will your research add? This should be demonstrated clearly and concisely. With regards to broader impacts, the applicants who are most convincing think outside of the box. Consider policy implications, mentoring activities, museum exhibits, public outreach, inclusion of local community members in all phases of the research, presentations at elementary schools, partnering with relevant organizations as your institution, etc. If your intellectual merit is lacking, broader impact cannot save your proposal. However, if you have a similarly positioned intellectual merit section to another applicant, but your broader impacts are excellent, you will be at an advantage. Okay, so the various sections of the SPRF proposal. It includes a project summary, so there are more details about all of these within the solicitation. A common problem with the project summary is people forget to include the requested information in the overview section. So we have specific information that we request, including the fellowship candidate's name and citizenship, their discipline and date of doctoral degree obtainment, their sponsoring scientist's name and title, the name of the proposed host institution, and the basic disciplinary fields involved in the project. So you might have grants that are examples from other folks, and it doesn't include this information. So that's why it's really important to make sure you have reviewed the solicitation for the program that you're applying to, because this is information we do need. You give your project description, which is your meat and potatoes part of your proposal. References, biographical sketch. We need one for the fellow and their sponsoring scientist. Budget. We still require budget justification even though the award amount is fixed. Your current and pending support page. So the current proposal counts as pending support on your current and pending support page and that of your sponsoring scientist. Facilities, equipment, and other resources. You'll talk about your host institution and what resources are available to you through that institution. New, as in, as of the last year or so, is the collaborators and other affiliations document, and there's instructions in the solicitation about what that includes. And then we have supplementary documentation. So all proposals require a data management plan, regardless of plans to collect data. So even if you're doing a secondary data analysis, you still are required to include a data management plan, an abstract of your dissertation, and your postdoctoral mentoring plan. I'll talk about that a little more. So your project description section, which I said is the meat and potatoes, should not exceed 13 pages. And this may vary from what is stated in the Pack G. But remember before, this is where I said the solicitation will trump any variation between the solicitation and the Pack G. So your part one is your research plan, which is approximately 10 pages. And that should include a theoretically grounded introduction or background section, a statement of research objectives, methods, and significance, and a specific section describing either the fundamental research or broadening participation nature of the project, as described in the solicitation. So, as with all NSF proposals, in addition to intellectual merit, broader impacts must also be addressed in this section. And the specific questions you have to answer for each track are, so for fundamental research, you have to have a section that addresses how this fellowship will advance fundamental scientific knowledge in the SB sciences. And for the broadening participation track, you need a section titled How this fellowship will help broaden or inform efforts to broaden the participation of underrepresented groups in the United States. Part two is the training plan. That's up to 3 pages and should include training objectives and the plans for achieving them. These can include scientific activities as well as other career or professional development activities. An explanation of how the fellowship activities will enhance the fellowship candidate's career development and future direction. A justification of the choice of sponsoring scientists and host institutions. And a timetable with yearly goals and benchmarks for major anticipated outcomes. And, you really want to make sure that the project is feasible within 2 years. That's one critique that I do hear often in our panels is our reviewers are not really convinced that the project can be completed within 2 years, and it seems overly ambitious, which might suggest that the proposal hasn't been clearly developed. So yes, as I mentioned, the budget is fixed at $130,000 for 2 years. In your budget justification, you must detail how you plan to spend the $30,000 or the $15,000 per year research and training allowance. If there are any international expenses, include those and detail them, because at times we can provide additional international funds, but we don't know that if that information is not included. I strongly suggest that you complete the budget table exactly as instructed in the solicitation. Do not deviate from this at all. And this is a clip from what's listed in the solicitation here. Put everything on the lines that this says that it should go, and don't add anything that isn't there. So it seems very clear-cut and very minimal, but this is all we need, and this is exactly what we need. Now, your postdoctoral mentoring plan is not to exceed 3 pages. This also deviates from the PAPG. We are allowed a longer page limit here. Should be written by or from the perspective of the sponsoring scientist, and should demonstrate how the proposed sponsor and host institution will provide the best environment for the fellowship candidate's proposed research. Can't get my mouse, sorry. Say it again. Oops. I'm almost done. It should demonstrate how the proposed sponsor and host institution will provide the best environment for the fellowship candidate's proposed research and training plan, and form the basis for a future independent research career. Regardless of the number of sponsors, only one integrated postdoctoral mentoring plan must be developed and submitted. And if the fellowship candidate plans to teach as part of their career development activities, which we allow, limited to teaching one course directly related to the fellowship candidate's doctoral or fellowship area of research. And there's more detail about this in the solicitation. And so here it includes the kind of information we expect to see within your postdoctoral mentoring plan. So when submitting your SPRF application, start early. I cannot stress this enough. Late submissions will not be accepted under any circumstances. I have had every year plenty of fellows call me panicking that they're having technical issues and are worried that they might not get their submission in on time. So I strongly encourage, even if the due date is November 5th, you're welcome to submit it on November 3rd. Don't wait till the end because we can't control external problems that you might encounter. Remember that you must register in FLASLane as an individual since you are not submitting through your institution. Proposals that are submitted by institutions are returned without review. And we have had, SROs call us from institutions really upset that the proposal got reviewed because they submitted it, but it's very clear in the solicitation, and I want to stress that this has to be an individual submission because awards are made to the individual, not the institution. You can submit through grants.gov. I don't suggest you do. I really suggest you submit through FastLane because grants.gov creates an additional step, and sometimes those proposals are not successfully transmitted to NSF by the due date. And if that occurs, the proposal will be returned without review. And incomplete applications or those that don't follow the solicitation guidelines will also be returned. We make every effort to be very clear about what you need to do in the solicitation. It shouldn't be confusing at all. So, if you need help with your application, follow the solicitation. It's going to guide you exactly to what you need to do. If you have any questions about a section that's not clear or that you just need more information, the PAPG details every section a lot more. And if you have remaining questions, you should also go to the program page and read the FAQs. Your sponsoring scientist is meant to guide you through this application. This is the first step of them providing mentorship to you, so feel free to ask them questions. They most likely, hopefully, have experience applying to NSF. And you can always email us here at the NSF program office. So how are SPRF proposals evaluated? 1, on the degree to which the results would enhance theories and or methodological approaches in the SB sciences. 2, the strength of the proposed fellow, sponsoring sciences team, and host institution. And 3, the promise of the proposed fellow's investigation of driving research questions and their future career development. going to talk more about merit review here. So all proposals are reviewed in a multidisciplinary merit review panel. This includes in-person and at times ad hoc reviews. So it's very important that your proposals speak to a broad audience. So as I mentioned before, the SPRF program supports proposals in all areas of SBE sciences. So what that means is our panelists are a multidisciplinary group of SBE scientists. So your proposal, it's unlikely that your proposal will be reviewed by 3 linguists, probably 2. And then the third one is going to be someone that's closely related. So for example, if you're looking at language development in children, the third person might be a developmental psychologist. If you have computational methods in there, the third person might be, a computational social scientist. If you're including fMRI, there might be a cognitive scientist as the third reviewer. So think about how your proposal speaks to not only those experts within your field, but also those people who might be slightly outside of your field as well. And each proposal will receive 3 independent ratings. So before panel, the reviewers receive your proposal and they rate it. And this is the scale that we use, and most programs here use as well. Excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. And proposals are then discussed and ranked in panel. And then they are placed in one of these categories: highly competitive, competitive, or not competitive. Now, what are some characteristics of a weak proposal? The literature review is not comprehensive. So, oftentimes there are proposals where a panelist will say they totally left out this area of research. So they don't feel confident that your literature review actually supports the aims of your project. Or you do not acknowledge the research that does not support your hypothesis. So even though you might be trying to, clarify something that is unclear within the literature, it's important that you are, when you're presenting your background, that you present both sides of the argument and that you don't only, focus on the side that supports your research aims. Or you're missing the basics and there are just too many assumptions. You're going to include 250 participants. There's no power analysis. How do we know that's enough for you to be able to test what you're planning on testing? There are some holes in your research that, if we were a guest, we could say, yes, this is what they're trying to do, but panelists don't want to guess. It needs to be very clear exactly what you want to do and why you're doing it. If there's ever a situation where there's vague statements within a proposal, those are times when proposals are not viewed as positively. The other issue is that your subsequent aims are contingent upon the prior ones. So if there's no plan B, we don't have a sense of what you're going to do if, for example, experiment 1 doesn't pan out and experiment 2 and 3 built upon experiment 1, then that doesn't leave confidence in the reviewers that you will have a plan B that will be appropriate. So if you have one of those designs, it's very important that you clearly state what will happen if that doesn't work, if the prior aim doesn't manifest itself as you expected. Or it's too narrow of a focus. So why is this important? At the end of the day, we really want to make sure that we're funding the most important areas of science. And if your proposal seems very narrow or really niche, it might not convey that. So think about how you're going to sell that type of research in the proposal. Now, what makes a strong proposal? So it has very strong intellectual merit. The PI has made a clear case for the importance of this research. Everyone's convinced and are excited about this project. The PI, his or herself, has the skill or at least a plan to receive the training to conduct the proposed research. A lot of times that is demonstrated by your dissertation abstract. So you may be building upon that, and it seems like the next logical step, and you have the training that's going to help you to execute that research. And the research aims logically build upon one another and are specific. We know exactly what you're going to test. We know what direction your hypothesis goes, and it's very clear, it's not too complicated, and we know what you're going to do and are excited about it. You're also attentive to the broader impacts. The broader impacts are more than just dissemination, right? You're going to go to conferences, you're going to publish. Sure, that's what we all hope to do, right? But how can you be creative? Think about demonstrating your broader impacts in a way that's outside of the box, like I mentioned before. And it shouldn't just be lip service. Demonstrate, detail what partnerships you have that will actually lead to you being able to execute those broader impacts. So there are no ambiguous plans either. The reviewers know clearly what the PI intends. And the sponsor, through their postdoctoral mentoring plan, demonstrates an investment in the PI's career development. And, we can tell by the tone of the postdoctoral mentoring plan how invested that PI is, that sponsor is in the career development of that fellow. And so you want to make sure that comes through. Okay, so you applied and you weren't successful. Don't fret. Our success rate is consistent with the NSF average of 20%. So 80% of people will be declined, right? So you can get back on the horse and resubmit, but you must continue to meet the eligibility criteria. If within that time frame you are no longer eligible, unfortunately you can't resubmit to the SPRF program, but you can use those reviews to help you build a strong proposal to submit to one of our other grant programs. So thoughtfully consider the reviews you receive. How are you going to address the weaknesses? Do you need to really sit down and think about revamping your proposal, or do you just need to make minor tweaks? I suggest you meet with your sponsoring scientists, sit down and discuss the feedback you receive from the panelists, and think about how you can address those comments. And you can reach out to the program officer to see what options there are for possibly addressing those reviews within your proposal resubmission. Okay. And that's all I have for now. We got through it without me coughing too much, I hope. So I'm going to turn it back over to David.
Okay, thanks everybody, and thank you very much, Dr. Welkom. So now is the question and answer portion of the webinar. Again, your microphones are muted right now, but you should see a little hand symbol at the top if you go to webinar dashboard. You can use that to raise your hand and ask a question, and I will enable your audio so that you can ask the question. So we've already got several people asking questions. So Andres, you're going to go first, and I have enabled your audio, so go ahead. Andres, are you there? Okay, Andres, you there? Let's go on to the next person. We'll come back to you, Andres, if you get the audio to work. Ryan, are you there? I've just enabled your audio, so go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for this. This was really informative and helpful. I'm wondering about sponsorship, and specifically if we can have our advisor from our dissertation or a co-advisor from the dissertation serve as the sponsor for the postdoc.
Yeah, so you can be sponsored by your advisor from your doctoral granting institution. You will have to provide your justification within your proposal. This also goes for if you're currently at a postdoc and you're applying for this fellowship, you still will need to provide justification for remaining at that institution. I will say, though, that sometimes it's at a disadvantage in terms of the panelist review. So I think you really need to make the case for why it is that you would be staying at that same place and not expanding your training for the purposes of the fellowship.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. So we have now, Andres, it turns out, doesn't have audio, so I'm going to ask his question for him. It says, can an applicant be on an F1 student visa? Otherwise, how can soon-to-be PhDs apply if they're international?
Unfortunately, they cannot be on a student visa. There are, I think, one thing to do would be to look at what some of the other fellowship programs restrictions are. If he wants to send me an email, maybe I can provide more information, but for the SPRF program and a lot of the NSF fellowship programs, you do need to be a U.S. citizen or equivalent.
The one exception to that I know of, this is Joan Mailing, is I believe that for the Documenting Endangered Languages Fellowships, their eligibility criteria are determined by NEH rather than NSF. And I believe that their requirements are still, if you've been in the country for a certain number of years, like 3, I believe it was, then so a certain number of international students might be eligible for that. But that's not this particular fellowship program. In general, fellowships, because they're awarded to the individual, will have a citizenship requirement.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Mailing. We have another question from Morgan. So Morgan, I'm going to enable your audio. Go ahead, Morgan.
Hi, thanks for this. This was very informative. I was just wondering, so I just applied for the dissertation improvement grant in July, and I was wondering if I can still apply for this grant if like the timeline doesn't overlap.
You can still apply. You wouldn't be able to hold both grants at the same time because the SPRF program requires 100% full-time effort. So if you were to be awarded, then depending on the status of the dissertation grant, we'd have to talk about the timing and possibly, and we just have to discuss how to move forward there. But you can apply, but you cannot hold more than one award at the same time.
So if the DDRI timeline I had for until September or something, then in this one I like the timeline I would start after September, something like that.
So our award start dates are between June and September. So for example, there's a application due this year in October or November. The award wouldn't start until anywhere between June 1st and September 15th, 2019.
Is that something that I can write in the grant and say that I would want it to start like September 1st or something?
You don't have to write that in the grant. If you're awarded, then we would talk about what start date is most appropriate. When you apply, you do say what start date you are requesting, but it can be any date within those 2 periods on the 1st or 15th of the month.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your question, Morgan. The next question is from Kim. So Kim, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your audio, so go ahead.
Hi, I have 2 questions. First one's kind of basic. You mentioned earlier about getting the PowerPoint downloaded, and I don't understand where that might happen.
Oh, so there's a couple of places. I guess this is for me, I assume. So there is,
Yes.
You should see a handouts widget on your GoToWebinar dashboard. Just click the little arrow at the left of it to expand that, and then you'll see that the downloadable handout. If you don't see it there for some reason, we will have a page on the LSA website where this recording of this webinar is going to be, and we'll have a copy of the handouts there too. So and I'll send around an email to everybody after the webinar with a link to that page.
Great, thank you. My second question is for Dr. Mailing. I study Creole specifically for my dissertation, Gullah Geechee, off the coast of Georgia, and I'm thinking about doing a project to empower the local high school children to help me do field work. And you mentioned that the documenting endangered languages is funded by the NEH. So would something like that not be? I could see that it would fit both in the documenting endangered languages as well as broadening participation. But I was confused by your mentioning documenting endangered languages is funded by the NEH.
For the Documenting Endangered Languages program, there are two different kinds of awards. Well, actually three. So they do dissertation proposals. They have fellowship, and they have regular research proposals. The dissertation, the postdoctoral fellowships are administered by NEH. It's only those.
I see. So if that's what I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so I'm trying to see exactly what your question is.
But
So,
yeah, the SPRF program supports postdocs that are in all disciplines under SBE Sciences. So that includes documenting endangered languages. So you can apply through the SPRF program for a postdoc that would be in that area you described.
Yeah,
okay.
And in terms of whether you think Creole studies, a project on Creole studies is appropriate for the Documenting Endangered Languages program, I would suggest that you send a one-page description of your research goals to Colleen Fitzgerald for guidance on the appropriateness of that research topic.
Okay. The tangent to that project would be to collect the voices. I do acoustic phonology, and so the tangent to that project would be not only to collect the stories and idiom from a language that has about 50 native speakers right now, and they're most of them over 50 years old, but also to collect the audio to be able to do acoustic analysis on that speech and compare it to other dialects of African American English. So it's kind of two branches from the same data collection project.
That's fine. That sounds to me like it's probably broader than the typical Dell Documenting Endangered Languages project. So I would suggest that you first reach out to Colleen Fitzgerald for some assessment of whether your particular project is appropriate for Dell, or whether it is sort of something that would fall under co-review with the linguistics program, and perhaps because of the acoustic nature of the perception, action, and cognition program. That is, we do a lot of co-review.
Okay.
And so, I mean, all of which makes it sound like what you're looking for is a postdoctoral fellowship, that probably this social science, the SBE postdoc is probably the right place for you, because it's open.
Yes.
It's not limited to Dell.
And Colleen Fitzgerald is
She's the program officer for Dell, for the Documenting Endangered Languages.
Okay, thank you.
And I've just sent everyone some information about Colleen Fitzgerald and her email address. So
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
That will appear in your little chat screen. All right. So and thank you. That was Kim, right? So we have a question from Noah. So I'm going to go ahead and enable your audio, Noah. So go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. Yeah. So thanks for this presentation. This was great. I have a question about multiple sponsoring scientists, and specifically, I'm wondering to myself, kind of weighing the options between. It seems on the one hand like it might be a good idea if there are multiple potential scientists at the same institution to try to get them involved, because it seems like broader perspectives for training and mentoring is good. But on the other hand, would worry about making it seem like you're just adding people in for no good reason. Is there any kind of advice in terms of when you should include additional sponsoring scientists?
Yeah, so you definitely need someone, if you have multiple, you need someone who's going to be identified as your lead sponsoring scientist, and this is the person who will be a co-PI on the proposal. What I usually tell people is you can have other mentors that are not a co-PI on your proposal. And sometimes down the road, in terms of your reporting, it's much easier if everyone is not listed as a co-PI, especially with all the documentation you need for biographic sketches and current and pending support. But you don't want your mentoring to seem so diffuse that it's dispersed among all these different people. Really consider who it is that who is your main mentor. And then if there's one or two people that really would add to your training and the link to your proposal is very clear, it's fine to include them.
Okay.
The majority of fellows only have one co-PI.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Noah. Next question is from Jonas. So Jonas, I've just enabled your audio. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks, David, and thank you, everybody. This was great. I have two questions, if I may. I'm considering this question of whether the host institution location gives me appropriate access to the population of interest. My primary research is in Indonesia, which is as far away as can be. I have relationships in Hawaii and Los Angeles, which is, you know, they're both still pretty far. Given this distance, how much of a difference would it make? Would it be advisable to choose Hawaii over Los Angeles, for example?
So that would not be what would be critical in that scenario. What would be critical is that your mentor is able to support you doing research in that area. So your host institution could be in Idaho, but if your mentor is an expert in conducting research in Indonesia and has established partnerships and can help you access that population, then that's what would be the part that you need to communicate in your proposal.
That's great. I'm glad I asked because I guess I misinterpreted access. So this is
well, you know, I think there's the issue is access. International is a little bit different, right? Because we do not support international host institutions. But if you are going to be studying international population, you need to demonstrate that you have access and that you don't really have the time during this fellowship to just begin to establish partnerships. So you want to be able to demonstrate either through your sponsor or your host institution that those partnerships are already established and you can hit the ground running with your fellowship. But for populations that are U.S. specific, being able to demonstrate that you will have access to that location, that population through a specific location is important.
very good. Thank you. And my next question was on one of your slides, and it's a question for the applicant. Do you require additional training to be successful? And I'm wondering whether the answer to that question is considered a positive versus neutral aspect to an application.
Well, if you have not demonstrated that you are prepared to conduct the research through your biographical sketch, through your dissertation abstract, don't think that the panelists will not pick up on that. So if what you're proposing requires you to receive additional training, say take a course in, I don't know, structural equation modeling, take a course in, I don't know, fMRI, include that. And then that, I think when fellowship applicants try to be vague about something and hope that maybe someone doesn't pick up on it, that's never the case. Within panel, you know, the reviewers are very sophisticated. A lot of them are sponsors of fellows. And so they know what to look for, and they're reading between the lines there. So a lot of our awardees are proposing to take a training course in, you know, one specific technique or another, and that's seen as being transparent in terms of your career development and training goals. So you want to make sure that you have demonstrated that you are well prepared to execute the project that you propose.
Excellent. I was not, by the way, trying to sneak anything between lines.
No, I'm not suggesting
it's a good clarification.
Yeah, no, people, I mean, often, I don't even, it's not even done with negative intent or trying to be sneaky, but I think for the most part, the more transparent you can be and upfront with yourself about what training you need to do the research, that's what's most important.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jonas. The next question is from Alexandra. So, Alexandra, I've unmuted you. Go ahead. Alexandre, are you there?
Yeah. Sorry, I hear now. So, Alex, it's maybe an advice, asking for an advice. So you mentioned that the postdoc fellowships of NSF are restricted to host institutions in the un-American soil. Well, I'm an American citizen, but I'm actually live part-time in France and might be willing to apply to some local institution. So are there some other programs, not this one, that would allow this? Applying to French, for example.
I don't think I understood your question. Are you asking?
Sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought the question was, is there some programs, presumably postdoctoral support program at NSF that would allow you to have an international host?
Exactly. Thank you.
As far as I know, the answer is I don't know of any.
I don't know of any either.
Okay.
The international office some years ago did have an international postdoctoral program, but that doesn't exist anymore.
Including for U.S. citizens, right?
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Okay.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you would have, for that program, you had to be a U.S. citizen, but it did allow for foreign hosts. That program no longer exists.
Thank you. That's clear.
Okay, thanks, Alexandra. The next question is going to be from Randy. So, Randy, go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for talking to us about this. My question is about choosing between track 1 and track 2. So obviously a lot of us, I'm sure, are working with endangered languages or languages whose speakers would be considered underrepresented. So my question is, in considering broadening participation, if the postdoc researcher themselves might not be considered from an underrepresented group. For instance, I'm a Caucasian female, but the people I work with are like indigenous Mexican speakers. Would that be something to look into, or I'm just sort of trying to figure out discerning between the two tracks?
Yeah, so that particular case, you could apply to either track. If you apply to the broadening participation track, you need to articulate how working with that particular group helps to inform broadening participation efforts. So that's the difference there.
Okay, so the idea would be, so is it broadening participation to include people in US-based scientific research, or I guess I'm just sort of curious to know more about that.
So if you look at the solicitation, it links to a Dear Colleague letter titled The Science of Broadening Participation, and it really goes into detail about what that includes. So if you want to, you can think about how the research is directly informing those broadening participation efforts. It might be through mentoring those local communities, or indirectly, so the knowledge gained will help to inform broadening participation.
Okay.
So I would look at the solicitation and then go to that link it has a lot more detail about what that includes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then, so is there also an element for a more sort of collaborative project if there's researchers working in Mexico? They're not U.S. citizens, they're not based at U.S. institutions. Sort of a secondary question about the international collaborations.
So, okay, so what are you asking about the international collaboration specifically?
If you design a project that is having, for instance, graduate students based in Mexico additionally work on the project, I guess would that fall under broader participation, or?
Yes, it could definitely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks for your question, Randy. Let's see. The next question is from Jed Sam. So, Jed Sam, go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for this. Just a clarification question. So we know how American universities like NYU have campuses internationally. Would those be considered as international institutions for the purposes of this application, or no? So take, for instance, NYU has an Abu Dhabi campus. Would that be considered an international institution, or?
Okay, so that isn't what we've encountered before, but my answer would be yes, that would be considered an international location. We need the structure and organization to be the U.S. host institution.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next question is from Kate. So, Kate, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. Would you mind talking a little bit more about what types of career development activities are often included in successful proposals? Do they include things like working towards a book publication, or just teaching or conferences, or what types of things are included?
All of the above, in addition to training, taking courses, even visiting going to another institution to meet with another mentor to receive training. You know, that as long as you can justify it as contributing to your career development, it makes sense to include.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. The next question, I think, is from somebody who doesn't have audio, so I'm going to try. Jan David, do you have audio that you can ask your question? Jan David or Jan David? I think not, so I'm going to go ahead and ask. Yeah, I just heard back, not working at the moment. So the question is, I'm in the process of obtaining my green card after earning my Ph.D. in 2017. My application is under review and the process will be completed by the start of 2019. Am I eligible to apply for this grant?
You need to have your U.S. citizenship or permanent residency by the time of the application submission deadline. So for FY19, which is due in the fall, you would not be eligible.
Okay, I think that answers that question. We don't have any more questions at the moment. Would anybody else like to raise their hands? We'll give just a few minutes for that. Dr. Welkom, Dr. Mailing, is there anything you'd like to add? Are there any sort of FAQs that you get all the time that haven't been addressed so far?
I think everyone asked really great questions, and I would like to refer people, please do take a look at the solicitation, look at the program page. As you're putting together your application, reach out if you have questions. Utilize your resources. Your sponsoring scientist is there to help guide you through this process. They have a wealth of knowledge. Don't be afraid to ask. This might be the beginning of your relationship with this person, and this is their expectation, hopefully, that they will be able to help guide your career development. So work closely with them on developing your proposal.
Okay, and we do have another question now in the meantime. Okay. So that's from Amber. Amber, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I guess in developing a project proposal, I really see that we have two main options, and one is to expand on our dissertation, kind of extend it, and the other is to develop a brand new project, of course, with the demonstrating that we have the proper training for it, of course. And I'm wondering if there's kind of, what are the pros and cons between the two options, and if one is more favored than the other?
No, not at all. You really just want to be able to demonstrate in your proposal that this is an exciting idea, that it's going to contribute, fill the gap, or contribute some new knowledge that is not available in the literature. So if that is building upon your dissertation, that's fine. If it's a new idea, that's fine as well. So I wouldn't worry. There's no pros or cons really one way or the other. I think you just want to be able to demonstrate the value of your research in your proposal.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any additional questions? We'll wait just a minute, and then feel free. We do have about 15 minutes left in the schedule. If you have questions, feel free to ask them now. And I'll just talk slowly for a bit, but if we don't have any more questions by the time I finish talking, I would like to thank you all for taking the time out of your afternoons to attend this webinar, and would like to very much thank Dr. Welkom for taking the time out of her schedule to let us know more about these fellowships. We'll have a recording of this webinar on the LSA website soon on our YouTube channel, and I'll let you know when it's available. And I see we do not have any further questions, so I think we'll go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you again, everybody, for your participation, and I'll be in touch soon.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Bye.
Bye-bye.